In the year 2145, humanity had conquered the stars, their colonies spanning hundreds of light-years across the galaxy. From the lush habitable worlds like Nova Terra to the barren moons scattered across the cosmos, humanity had carved out its place as a thriving species, capable of surviving in the most hostile environments. They were powerful, resourceful, and unyielding in the face of adversity. However, no matter how far humanity had reached into the galaxy, one thing remained constant: their fierce protection of their own. It was a truth that no one had ever questioned until the fateful day the Ynnari arrived in the human-occupied system of Nova Terra. At first, the Ynnari appeared as a distant curiosity, a species from a far-off corner of the galaxy known for their cold, calculating intelligence and their singular ambition to understand the resilience of other species through experimentation. For years, humanity had heard rumors about them, but had never had direct contact. That was until the Ynnari ships came into orbit around Nova Terra, the largest and most prosperous human colony in the sector. Captain Alex Sterling stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, staring at the holographic display of Nova Terra. She could feel the weight of her position pressing down on her shoulders, the responsibility of keeping her people safe. The Odyssey wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's might, a warship capable of taking on entire fleets. And in a few moments, she would be forced to make decisions that could change the course of human history. "Captain," Lieutenant Raymond Kessler said, his voice taut with tension, "the Ynnari fleet is still in orbit. We haven't received any more communications from them." Colonel George Peck looked skeptical. "We won't be receiving any," Captain Sterling replied, her voice unwavering. She had heard the reports, had seen the images of the Ynnari fleet descending upon Nova Terra, their massive ships hovering like dark clouds. But it wasn't the ships that concerned her. It was their purpose. "Prepare the strike teams. We're going in." Kessler nodded, turning to relay the orders to the crew. Sterling's mind raced, but her demeanor remained stoic. The Ynnari had made their intentions clear. They weren't here to trade, to negotiate, or to offer alliances. They were here for something far darker. Hours earlier, the first transmission from the Ynnari emissary had arrived, garbled and cold. Their leader's voice was mechanical, emotionless, as it delivered the terms of their visit. "We require the young humans," the message had said. "We need them for experimentation. Your species is resilient, your children especially. We seek to understand how your kind thrives under adversity." Humanity's leaders had tried to reason with them, to explain the error of their ways, but the Ynnari didn't care about reasoning. They cared only for results. And so, without warning, they descended upon Nova Terra, taking children from their homes, thousands of them, leaving their families with only questions and anguish. The silence of a childless world spoke louder than any words could. News spread like wildfire across the human colonies. The shock, the disbelief, the horror, it all boiled down to one irrefutable fact. The Ynnari had hurt humanity's most sacred treasure, their children. And now, humanity would show them the price for such a transgression. Across the galaxy, the Confederation of Human Colonies, CHC, had gathered. Fleet commanders, military strategists, and every capable soldier prepared for what was to come. The Ynnari might have been technologically superior, but they had made one grave miscalculation. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for vengeance, especially when it came to protecting the innocent. Captain Sterling was a woman who had seen the horrors of war, who had fought in the harshest of conditions. But this mission was personal. It was more than just a battle for territory or power. It was a fight for justice. They had taken children, and for that, every last Ynnari would pay. She paced across the command deck, her sharp eyes scanning the view screen as Novaterra grew closer. "I want a full strike plan," she said, turning to Kessler. "We're going in hot. No hesitation, no mercy. We hit them fast, hard, and we take back every single one of those children." "Eh, Doctor?" Kessler turned to his console, his fingers flying across the keys. "Aye, Captain. Strike teams are prepped. We've got 3 main objectives: rescue the children, cripple their fleet, and make sure the Yunari know exactly why they made the mistake of messing with us." Sterling nodded, but her mind was already a few steps ahead. She had commanded forces in numerous skirmishes, but this would be different. The Yunari were not like other enemies. They were advanced, strategic, and relentless. But they had never encountered humanity at its full strength, never seen what a species could do when driven by the most primal of instincts. The instinct to protect. The Odyssey cut through the atmosphere of Novaterra's moon, and soon it was among the Yunari ships. Sterling's fists clenched as she stared out at the imposing fleet. The mothership loomed in front of them, a towering dark structure that dwarfed the human ships around it. The Yunari vessels were sleek and angular, designed for intimidation rather than diplomacy. "Strike teams, prepare for deployment," Sterling ordered, her voice low but filled with authority. "This is where we make our stand." The human forces moved quickly and decisively. Stealth shuttles were deployed, silently slipping through the cracks in the Yunari defenses. The teams would infiltrate the mothership and other key Nari ships, neutralizing any opposition along the way. The children were being held somewhere deep within the mothership's maze-like interior, and it was up to Sterling's elite soldiers to find them and bring them home. As the shuttle doors opened, Sterling felt the rush of adrenaline that came with every mission. The cool, artificial air of the Yunari ship hit her face as she stepped onto the alien vessel. It was unlike any ship she had ever been on. A maze of narrow corridors, cold metallic walls, and dim lighting that cast long shadows. It felt like the heart of a predator, cold and calculating, its very architecture designed for control and fear. "Captain, we're in," Kessler's voice crackled over the comm. "We've infiltrated the ship. The children are being held in the lower levels." Sterling didn't hesitate. "Good. Proceed with caution. We don't know what kind of traps or defenses they have down there, but we're not leaving without them." The soldiers moved with precision, their movements practiced and fluid. Each one of them knew their role, each one ready to face whatever danger awaited them. They didn't just want to win this battle, they wanted to send a message. They were human, and they would never bow to anyone. Especially not to those who would harm their children. As they made their way deeper into the ship, Sterling's mind wandered to the images of the children who had been taken. She had seen their faces on the news broadcasts, fear and confusion in their eyes as they were ripped away from their families. She had seen the desperate pleas from the parents, their voices trembling with the weight of helplessness. That was something no one could forget, and it was something that would fuel the fire within her until the very end. Desperation, too, letting everyone go fresh with what they wished to achieve. "Captain, we've reached the holding area," Kessler reported, breaking her thoughts. "It's heavily guarded, but we've got a plan to breach." "Do it," Sterling ordered. "No more waiting. We get in, we take the children, and we get out. No Yunari left standing when we're done." The breach was swift. Explosives detonated along the doors, sending a shower of debris into the air. The soldiers charged forward, weapons raised, as the Yunari guards scrambled to respond. But it was too late. The humans were a force of nature, unstoppable and relentless. They fought with the kind of fury that only a species could when it was fighting for its survival. In the holding area, the children were shackled and imprisoned in cold, metallic cages. Their eyes were wide with fear, their faces gaunt from days of captivity. But when they saw the humans coming to their rescue, a flicker of hope ignited in their eyes. Sterling moved forward, her voice steady as she approached the nearest cage. "We're here to get you out," she said softly, her heart heavy with the weight of what these children had endured. Are you going to make them pay?" one of the children asked, her voice trembling. Sterling knelt down, her face inches from the child's. "Oh, yes," she said, her tone cold but filled with certainty. "We're going to make them regret ever laying a hand on you." The Inari fleet had made a grave mistake. They had thought they could experiment on human children without consequence. They had thought that their advanced technology and cold, calculating nature would make them untouchable. But they had underestimated humanity. They had underestimated what it meant to be human. As the children were freed, Sterling's mind focused on the final part of the mission, the Inari fleet. It was time to send a message that would echo across the stars. Humanity had always been known for its resilience, for its ability to adapt and survive. But now, the Inari would learn that humanity was also a force of vengeance, a force that would never forget when the innocent were harmed. It was a simple truth. You hurt human kids. Now humanity would hurt your entire species. The battle had only just begun. The Inari fleet had arrived without warning, their ships descending upon Nova Terra like a plague from the dark corners of the galaxy. Their sleek, imposing vessels broke through the atmosphere, casting long shadows over the sprawling cities below. At first, humanity had thought it was a diplomatic mission, but the message sent by their emissaries shattered that illusion in a way no one could have prepared for. "We require the young humans," the cold voice of the Inari leader had declared, transmitted through a signal that crackled with chilling finality. "We need them for experimentation. Your species is resilient, your children especially. We seek to understand how your kind thrives under adversity." Captain Alex Sterling had been on the front lines of countless battles, but nothing could have prepared her for this. The Inari had demanded human children, taken them from their families without hesitation, as if they were nothing more than lab specimens to be studied. And with that, they had crossed an irreversible line. They hadn't just threatened humanity's survival, they had threatened the very essence of what made them human. The human response was swift and merciless. Within hours, the Confederation of Human Colonies had mobilized its fleets, its elite soldiers, and its most skilled tacticians. The Inari had underestimated humanity's fury, especially when it came to their children. Humanity would show them just how far they were willing to go to reclaim what was theirs. Captain Sterling stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, the flagship of the human armada. Her eyes, cold and determined, flicked across the holographic display of Nova Terra. The planet, once peaceful and bustling, was now eerily silent, the once bright lights of its cities now dimmed by the shadow of the Inari fleet. She could feel the weight of her responsibility, the pressure of knowing that the future of her people rested on this mission. "We're entering the atmosphere now," Lieutenant Raymond Kessler, her first officer, said quietly. "Strike teams are ready." "We'll need to act fast, Captain. We don't know how much time we have." "I'm aware," Sterling replied, her voice steady, though a fire burned behind her eyes. "The Inari think they can take our children without consequences. They're wrong. We'll show them exactly what happens when they make that mistake." Her hands gripped the armrests of her command chair as she stared at the fleet, at the dark alien ships hovering over Nova Terra. Her jaw clenched with each passing moment. The Inari didn't just want to subdue humanity. They wanted to experiment on the most vulnerable, the most precious members of their species. The stakes had never been higher. "We'll hit them hard," she said, her voice calm but laced with fury. "No negotiations, no surrender. We go in, we take back our children, and we leave nothing behind. Get me the strike team status." Kessler's fingers danced across his console, sending out orders to the fleet. "All strike teams are in position, Captain. We've got 100 of our best soldiers ready to deploy. The Inari mothership's interior is heavily guarded, but we've got a few surprises of our own. Make sure they understand what happens when you mess with humanity," Sterling said, her voice low and cold. "We don't just fight to survive. We fight to make sure you'll never do this again." The first wave of shuttles launched from the Odyssey, cutting through the atmosphere with silent precision. The soldiers inside, clad in advanced armor and armed with state-of-the-art weapons, were ready for the fight of their lives. Each shuttle was filled with elite forces hand-picked from across the Confederation. They were the best of the best, tactical experts, soldiers forged in the harshest environments, each of them ready to face whatever the Inari had waiting for them. The plan was simple: infiltrate the Inari mothership, find the children, and make sure the Inari understood that there were consequences to crossing humanity. There would be no negotiation, no mercy. For every child they had taken, humanity would take a toll on the Inari. Sterling's heart raced as she watched the shuttles disappear into the night, heading toward the Inari flagship. She knew the risk. She knew that the Inari would retaliate, that they would fight back with everything they had. But the stakes were too high. They couldn't afford to fail. Not when innocent lives hung in the balance. The shuttles arrived at the Inari mothership, docking silently with the alien vessel. The air was thick with tension as Sterling's team moved out. The Inari ship was like nothing they had encountered before, its interior a maze of cold metal and dim lighting, its corridors winding and narrow, designed for intimidation and control. Sterling led the charge as they breached the first set of doors, her heart pounding with anticipation. She could feel the weight of the mission pressing on her shoulders, the knowledge that the lives of hundreds of children rested in her hands. But there was something else, too, something darker. A deep, burning fury that filled her chest. They had taken their children, and now they would pay for it. The soldiers moved in tight formation, their weapons raised and ready. The air was thick with the smell of something alien, something foul. The Inari had transformed this ship into a place of suffering. The walls were covered in strange symbols, the floor slick with something that might have been blood. It was a ship built for fear, for domination, and for experimentation. It was a nightmare come to life. "We've got movement ahead," Kessler's voice crackled over the comms. "Inari soldiers, they're preparing to engage." Sterling's gaze hardened. "We're not here to negotiate. We're here to take back what's ours. Move out." The battle began in earnest as the Inari soldiers appeared around the corner, their sleek insectoid forms moving with unnatural speed. Their weapons fired energy blasts that crackled through the air, but the human soldiers were ready. They returned fire with precision, their weapons cutting through the air, downing the Inari in a matter of seconds. The Inari were advanced, but they didn't understand the relentlessness of humanity's will to protect. Sterling led the charge, her blaster in hand as she cut through the enemy forces. The soldiers followed her lead, moving as one unit, clearing each corridor with military precision. There was no room for hesitation, no time for mercy. Every second counted. Every moment brought them closer to the children. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they reached the holding cells. The doors slid open, revealing rows of cages, each one containing a child. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide with fear. But there was something else there, too, something that gave Sterling hope. They were alive. They were still fighting. "Captain," Kessler said, his voice tight with emotion, "they're all here." Sterling didn't waste a second. She moved forward, her voice calm but filled with determination. "We're getting you out of here. Don't worry. We're taking you home." The children looked up at her, some of them confused, others with tears in their eyes. They had been through horrors no one should ever experience. But now they had hope. Now they had a chance to survive. Sterling's heart ached for them, but she knew that the Ynnari would pay for what they had done. The soldiers began to release the children from their cages, working quickly but carefully. They didn't know how much longer they had before the Ynnari would retaliate, but they had one mission: get the children to safety. No one else mattered. "Where are the rest?" one of the children asked, her voice small. "Safe," Sterling replied, her voice gentle but firm. "We're taking everyone with us. We'll get you all back to your families." But as the last child was freed, an explosion rocked the ship. The walls trembled and the lights flickered. The Ynnari had come in force. They were ready for a fight. "Captain, we need to move, now," Kessler yelled. Sterling nodded, her face hardening. "Everyone, with me. We're not leaving anyone behind." The battle for the children was far from over. But Captain Sterling knew one thing for certain: humanity would not be broken. They would fight with everything they had, and they would make the Ynnari understand the price of their mistake. They had taken their children, but humanity would take their entire species. This version expands upon the character interactions, the detailed atmosphere of the alien ship, and the intense action during the battle to rescue the children. It also further emphasizes humanity's drive to protect their own and retaliate for the Ynnari's actions. Let me know if you'd like any more details or specific elements further developed. Captain Alex Sterling's heart pounded in her chest as she sprinted down the alien corridors, the sound of combat echoing in her ears. The ship trembled beneath her feet, the unmistakable signs of war reverberating through the walls. The Ynnari had retaliated with brutal efficiency, their forces pouring in from every direction. But the human soldiers under her command were a force unlike anything the Ynnari had anticipated. They fought not just for survival, but for something deeper, something more primal. Sterling's team had rescued the children, but the mission was far from over. The Ynnari were coming, and they wouldn't stop until they had taken back what they had lost. But Sterling wasn't going to let that happen, not on her watch. She wouldn't let the Ynnari have even a single child back. They would pay for their transgression. "Captain, we've got incoming," Lieutenant Kessler's voice crackled through the comms. "More Ynnari soldiers. They're setting up a perimeter around the exit. They've realized we're not backing down." Sterling didn't flinch. She knew they would come. They had to. The Ynnari weren't going to let the humans escape with their prize without putting up a fight. But this time, they wouldn't be prepared for what humanity could do when cornered. "Understood, Kessler. Get the children to safety," Sterling ordered, her voice calm, even as her pulse raced. "We'll hold them off." There was a brief silence before Kessler replied, "Copy that. We're moving out." Sterling looked over her shoulder as the last of the children were ushered toward the shuttle. She had seen the fear in their eyes, their wide, uncertain stares as they had been freed from their cages. But there was also something else there, something flickering in their gazes. Hope that they hadn't been abandoned, that someone cared enough to fight for them. The soldiers with Sterling formed a tight circle around her, their weapons ready, their expressions hard. They were all used to battle, used to being outnumbered, outgunned, and still pushing forward. But this was different. This wasn't just another mission. This wasn't just about defeating an enemy. This was about sending a message. The Ynnari had taken what was sacred to humanity, their children, and that was a line that could never be uncrossed. The first wave of Ynnari soldiers came charging around the corner, their strange insectoid features glowing under the dim lights of the ship. They were fast, faster than human soldiers, but they lacked something humanity had in abundance: determination. The humans didn't stop. They didn't hesitate. They fought like animals protecting their cubs. like predators defending their territory. The first Unari soldier fell with a grunt as Kessler's plasma rifle ripped through its exoskeleton. It collapsed in a heap, its lifeless body crumpling to the floor. Another Unari swung its bladed arm toward Sterling, but she was faster. She ducked under the attack, her own blaster coming up and firing in one fluid motion. The Unari soldier was thrown back, crashing into the wall with a sickening crunch. But there were more, many more. Sterling's heart thudded in her chest as the alien forces poured in, their weapons crackling with energy. She moved with the precision of a trained fighter, each movement sharp, deliberate. She fired, reloaded, and fired again, the energy blasts lighting up the dark corridors. The humans were relentless, pressing forward with an unyielding drive, pushing the Unari back, step by step. "Captain, we need to move!" Kessler shouted, as a wave of energy blasts flew past them, narrowly missing. "The perimeter's tightening, we can't hold them much longer." Sterling gritted her teeth, her gaze flicking toward the retreating soldiers and the children in tow. The Unari might have had advanced technology, but they didn't understand the tenacity of humanity. They didn't understand what it meant to fight for something you loved, to fight to protect the innocent. "We're not running, Kessler," she said firmly, her voice unshakable. "We hold this position until the last child is safe, and then we go." The Unari were closing in. Sterling could hear the hissing of their weapons charging up, the flicker of their energy shields blocking the human blasts. But she wouldn't let that stop her. She wouldn't let them take back what they had stolen. She and her team moved forward, pushing into the heart of the Unari line, taking out one soldier after another. With each falling Unari, the humans advanced, reclaiming ground that had once belonged to the enemy. The chaos of the battle was almost a blur. The flashes of plasma fire, the sharp crack of weapons, the alien screeches that filled the air. But in the center of it all was Sterling, her focus razor-sharp. Nothing could shake her resolve. A sudden explosion ripped through the corridor, sending a wave of force that knocked her off her feet. Sterling's head slammed against the floor, and for a moment the world spun around her. She groaned, trying to push herself up, her vision blurred. The sounds of battle were distant now, muffled as her mind struggled to regain focus. But then she heard it, crying. The sound of a child's voice. It cut through the disorientation like a knife, piercing her confusion and driving her forward. She pushed herself upright, ignoring the pain in her head. Her eyes scanned the hallway, seeking the source of the sound. The children. They were still vulnerable. Sterling's pulse surged with renewed energy. She couldn't let them be harmed. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. "Captain!" Kessler's voice was frantic through the comms. "You've got to get out of there. The ship's rigged to blow. We're not going to make it if we don't leave now." "No," Sterling said, her voice fierce. "I'm not leaving." "Get them out. I'll handle the Unari." "Damn it, Captain," Kessler shouted. "This isn't the time for heroics. Get out of there." Sterling was already moving, her mind focused. The Unari had underestimated them, but they weren't going to stop. She could feel the ship shaking as explosions reverberated through the hull. The Unari knew they were losing. They were desperate. And when their enemies were desperate, that's when they were most dangerous. With a final glance toward Kessler's retreating form, Sterling made her decision. She would hold the line. She would make sure every child was safely off the ship, and she would make the Unari regret ever crossing humanity. The Unari were closing in, but Sterling wasn't afraid. She wasn't even angry anymore. She was determined. She fired her weapon one last time, taking down the last of the Unari soldiers blocking the escape route. The children were out of the line of fire. Her team had successfully evacuated the last of the civilians, and the ship was now ready to collapse on itself. But just before she left, she turned to face the Unari's command center. Her final message to them: one she would carry with her, was simple and powerful. "You hurt human kids," she said through the comms, her voice cold, filled with conviction. "Now humanity will hurt your entire species." Bad. Leap at a snail's pace as she ripped behind the ship behind her. Sterling sprinted for the exit. The Odyssey was waiting in orbit, its engines already prepared for the long journey back to safety. The Inari mothership was crumbling, a fiery wreck in space, as humanity's wrath consumed it. Sterling's pulse began to slow as the shuttle doors closed behind her. The mission had been a success. The children were safe, the Nerari were defeated, and the message had been sent across the stars. Humanity would not be broken, not now, not ever. This chapter builds upon the final moments of the battle and the successful escape of the children, expanding on the emotional and physical struggle. The humans' determination to never give up, even in the face of overwhelming odds, is reinforced, leading to a conclusion that cements the resolve of the human race and sends a strong message to the Inari. Let me know if you'd like to continue this story or add any specific details.